Well, Alpesh Patel from Pryfinian Partners is here with us to go through the papers. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, let's talk about Athens. And it's almost as if the EU would like to just move out of Brussels and move to Athens and run the show themselves.
Well, I actually said on this programme about 4 months ago, that's exactly what's needed. And the reason it's needed, it's a little bit like rehabilitating an alcoholic. You really have to be on their back. And the only way to control the Greek economy is actually for the Germans to move in. And that is pretty much what's happening. Big German brother is watching. The Greeks are not even going to be able to go to the bathroom without permission from their neighbours. What is interesting, however, is that output since the start of the crisis has dropped 16% in Greece. During the Great Depression in the US, it was double that. It had dropped double that in the United States. So if the Greeks think this is painful, it hasn't even started. And if they want to continue whinging, it's really simple. Just please leave, because you're only the 37th largest economy in the world. You're puny and you're dragging the rest of us down, and you'll be so much happier if you just go and devalue your currency and do it your own way.
It may be that Germany is of that view, and increasingly Greeks are as well.
Exactly. Not quite yet, though, but certainly some of the Germans, not the German Chancellor, but some of the other high-ranking German officials are now openly talking about ejection and not just about some kind of default.
Do you think it's because now everybody's had time to think about what the impacts of that might be?
I think it's become more and more palatable as time has gone on, not least because the sums of money involved are becoming not just larger and larger, which is one thing, but actually we still don't know what the bottom line is. And the reason we don't is because their short-term debt keeps on maturing. In other words, they have to keep on refinancing and finding more and more, which means they have to keep on coming back to Big Brother and saying, I need some more money. And it's far better to draw a line and say, look, either Europe starts printing money and says, look, we're going to wipe it off, start a clean slate, which it's clearly not willing or able to do. Or secondly, it says, look, for God's sake, for your own sake, just go, devalue, do it yourself. And as I say, they've only dropped output at 16%. There's a long way to go before it gets to the kind of levels Argentina has seen, Russia in the past has seen, and certainly the United States has seen. So, as I say, the pain, if they think this is painful, it'll be twice as worse unless they have a devaluation, which is inevitably how these things have traditionally ended, except they're currently straitjacketed to the euro.
And what seems to be very, very apparent also to me is that there's so much mistrust of the entire political class in Greece, isn't there? So it's going to take a generation to recover, isn't it?
Most probably more than a generation. Economically, the estimates are that even after all of this stringency, even after controlling their economy, saying how much they can and can't spend, it'll be about 2020 before they get back to where they were 3 years ago, unless they have a massive devaluation, which doesn't help the fundamental problems of corruption, tax evasion. If I were them, I'd be absolutely grateful that the Germans are coming in to give them some management consultancy advice on how to run an economy, because actually the Germans do it incredibly well, and they should be grateful that they're getting all of this. And I say, I can understand why they're whinging and why they're complaining, because it's not nice when you've just lost your job. But on the flip side, it's a mess which there are solutions. Either get the money printed or leave.
So foreign direct investment is dropping, so it would seem.
Into China, yes, absolutely. This news story, front page of China Daily. The reason this is important is because it does affect the rest of the world, the Chinese economy being about half the size of the American economy, and therefore we're wondering whether if a lack of investment into China means Chinese GDP might drop. Well, actually, no, it won't. What this actually means is that Chinese labour costs are increasing. That's why the rest of the world has dropped their investments into China. Material costs have increased in China. In other words, China's becoming less competitive, which goes back to the complaint that the rest of the world has had about China, which is, again, devalue your currency. Stop pegging it to the dollar, make it cheaper, it'll make it more attractive and more competitive. But they're refusing to do this because they want controlled domestic inflation, and they want to make their exports incredibly competitive, some would say unfairly competitive, through currency manipulation. But this is the pain you feel when you do that kind of domestic policies. You're not going to get foreign direct investment of the levels you were used to.
Right. The Independent, and the picture that goes along with this story is one that is likely to make it into any kind of political campaigns that are upcoming, isn't it? UK to take a major role in making new Eurozones, but there's currency stampede at French banks. But why exactly?
Well, on the Eurodrones, this is clearly a case of the UK and France seeing an opportunity, or rather being compelled, to take a more active military role in regions around the world, because the United States is, first of all, not able to do the activity it was doing militarily because it's got its own budgetary problems. Now, you've seen with Libya, you saw with Egypt, and you saw increasingly with Syria, Britain and France willing to take the lead role, certainly through NATO. And if the United States does leave NATO, because it's a very costly obligation upon the US, then France and the UK, both Security Council members, both nuclear powers, I guess, see this as an opportunity to shape the world more in a mould of their liking. And I think the Eurodrones, this is the bigger aspect of it, that we will see a more resurgent United Kingdom and France.
And it makes sense as well, doesn't it, in this age of austerity, to combine resources, doesn't it?
Well, there is the working with your allies. Though having said that, I guess over the last 200 years, there is an argument to be made that the French are more the enemies than the allies of Britain, given the number of wars they've had. Probably more wars between the two countries than there have been between Britain and Russia, that's for sure.
OK, let's turn our thought to the impact of unemployment. For youth, Britain, few jobs and rising anger. We forget, well, we don't forget, but it is worth reminding ourselves that unemployment is not just a number.
When you look at the facts, and I'm going to turn actually to the numbers, though you say that, 22% in the UK in terms of youth unemployment. If you want to compare that with Greece, it's nearly 50%, and in Spain, as a comparator, it's around 50% as well, same as the Greek level. Now, the reason this is important is because, of course, this is the future. These individuals are a waste if they're not in jobs, and it becomes worse for a country as it evolves, as the time passes, and you haven't got a skilled, talented labour pool to call upon because they've not been in jobs enhancing those skills. That's one thing. If I was looking for solutions to this, I think they're relatively straightforward solutions. First of all is a tax cut on employment tax, so things like national insurance in the UK and the equivalent in other countries. It just makes it cheaper for employers to employ these individuals. And that's not just important in terms of getting people into jobs, but long term, when you're employing somebody, you're actually investing in them, or they're being invested in through developing their skills. The second thing is, it's always an easy solution to say, but government spending for apprenticeships to again develop those skills. But far cheaper to develop those skills by having the private sector do it, by making it cheaper for them to employ people. And that's what needs to be done. Employers will tell you right across the board they'd love to employ more people, but it's just too darn expensive. In other words, fiscal policy in not just this country but in other countries is not quite aligned to getting to the solution, and that's the problem.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Alpesh-BBC, for taking us through the newspapers today. Thank you.